Well, I was always mechanically minded, and my mother gave me a clock to fix at home that was stopped, and I was left in charge of it for a while. Whenever it stopped, I was asked to get it going again, and since then I've always had an interest in clocks, swapping them, and you get to know people who have an interest in clocks, and did a course in clocks and horology at one stage, and got more interested in it, and met people during that course that had clocks and swapped clocks with them and exchanged clocks, and it just built up from that. The easiest ones are probably the American drop tiles. They were mass produced in America during the early 1900s, late 1890s and that, by various companies, and Sonia, New Haven, Jerome, lots of them, Welch, and they mass produced them and flooded Europe with these mass produced works for wall clocks. The cases then were made in England, very often by Italian craftsmen, who inlaid them and veneered them and made them look very polished. But the works themselves are quite easy to work on, and they're very easy to manipulate, except they do wear down in time, of course, like any clock. Mechanical clocks aren't quite as popular as they were 30, 40 years ago, even less, 10 years ago, because the generation of my time, was 40s, 50s, that could always remember the American drop-dial clock hanging in the kitchen, the country clock, everybody had one. And nostalgia kind of set in later years, and people began to buy them back and collect them, even though they had been dispensed with and thrown out and put in barns and that. When electricity came in, electrical clocks came in, and then we had the battery clocks. But then the people began to think back and say, well, we'd like the old kitchen clocks again, and it became popular again. But that generation are now thinning out, and the younger generation have little interest in the mechanical clocks. During the Celtic Tiger there was a little explosion, alright, in the demand. People with big houses and that would like to have top quality grandfather clocks sitting in the hall. So during that period there was a bit of a comeback and very good high quality clocks where people were very discerning, and the day of the old battered looking clock hanging on the wall was gone. I would have a good selection of Vienna clocks, single weight, double weight, spring and double springs, and they would be 19th century, mostly German made, very popular and decorative in the big houses. They're about, the bigger they are, the more in demand. They are now have drifted off a bit, and they're not as popular as they used to be. Grandfather again have dropped because of the new system of building and the new phases that have come in, like where as little furniture as possible is more acceptable in houses, and the grandfather was trying to take up too much room. So mantle clocks, mantle pieces are gone. So the big clocks aren't as much in demand as the small, good quality clocks. Possibly little French clocks and that are quite popular all the time, like travel clocks and such, where they don't take up much space. French produced an awful lot of clocks. Very often they had polished slate cases. This was Belgian slate, highly polished. It looks like some would refer to as black marble. And this was often inlaid with other marbles to decorate the clock, or brass. And some of them were very flashy and very expensive at the time. Some good quality, all the French movements were good quality. Various types of movements. Again, you have visible escapements where you can see the movement of the clock through the glass at the front, and you have they're mostly, a lot of them are pendulum clocks. The size varied an awful lot, some plain enough and some very, very ornate, with garnitures. That's a pair of side ornaments that match the clock. Now, the old type horologists as we know them, like, are practically a breed of the past. It's not feasible now for a man to sit down to repair a clock, maybe replace parts and some of these old clocks, and to be paid sufficiently to compensate him for the work he had done. So most of the clocks nowadays are either battery or mostly quartz, and the horologists have varied over to putting a strap in a watch or putting a battery in a watch, which is much more lucrative and simple. Repair them not much longer. I won't repair clocks for much longer because physically it's demanding on the back and on the neck. You're constantly bent over looking at them, and that takes its toll in time. Plus your hand doesn't become as steady, any steadier as you get older. When you take that into account, a wife that gives out to you all the time about taking up space, and a grandson just only wants to help you, like, putting the screwdriver in the back of the works.